White House official made the decision to bar the AP reporter from the Oval Office and the diplomatic reception room last night.
Well, first of all, let me just set the record straight. It is a privilege to cover this White House. It's a privilege to be the White House press secretary. And nobody has the right to go into the Oval Office and ask the President of the United States questions. That's an invitation that is given. And there are hundreds of outlets on this campus. Many of you in this room who don't have the privilege of being part of that pool every single day and getting to ask the President questions. We reserve the right to decide who gets to go into the Oval Office, and you all have credentials to be here, including the Associated Press, who is in.
Karoline isn't just playing nice, she's playing smart. Every time a reporter lobs a loaded gotcha question her way, she hits back so hard it leaves the whole room cringing. No flinching, no hesitation, just razor-sharp comebacks packed with cold, hard facts. 1 minute she's calmly fielding questions, the next she's flipping the script and taking control of the entire conversation. Today, we're breaking down her most powerful mic drop moments, every scorching comeback, every jaw-dropping correction, and every time a smug reporter thought they had her, only to be left speechless and stunned on live TV. From her first savage response to the final awkward silence, this is a masterclass in staying cool, cutting through spin, and owning the room. You won't want to miss a second.
Very upfront in my briefing on day one that if we feel that there are lies being pushed by outlets in this room, we are going to hold those lies accountable. And it is a fact that the body of water off the coast of Louisiana is called the Gulf of America. And I'm not sure why news outlets don't want to call it that, but that is what it is. The Secretary of Interior has made that the official designation in the Geographical Identification Name Server, and Apple has recognized that, Google has recognized that, pretty much every other outlet in this room has recognized that body of water as the Gulf of America, and it's very important to this administration that we get that right, not just for people here at home, but also.
Now let's talk about when the chaos really kicked off. That it started when the Associated Press picked a fight over semantics, flat out refusing to recognize the term Gulf of America, stubbornly clinging to the old school Gulf of Mexico. Their excuse: it's been that way for 400 years. Seriously, they argued that international bodies haven't approved the name change, as if journalism needs a permission slip to evolve. Just another case of legacy media digging in not for truth, but for control. But the drama didn't end there. Moments later, a CNN reporter tossed out a question so incendiary it practically set the press room ablaze. And Karoline, she was ready. She didn't just push back, she exposed the deeper issue. The media's rejection of the new name wasn't about journalistic integrity, it was about power. These weren't objective reporters, they were activists in press badges, clinging to a narrative like it was scripture. Then came the hammer drop. When the White House revoked the AP's press credentials, the uproar was instant. The AP's executive editor fired off a furious letter to the chief of staff, accusing the administration of punishing them for their reporting, and vowing to defend both the First Amendment and the public's right to independent journalism. But by then the story had already shifted and Karoline was the one holding the mic.
Arrests ICE has made so far since President Trump came back into office. Can you just tell us the numbers? How many have a criminal record versus those who are just in the country illegally?
All of them, because they illegally broke our nation's laws and therefore they are criminals as far as this administration goes. I know the last administration didn't see it that way, so it's a big culture shift in our nation to view someone who breaks our immigration laws as a criminal, but that's exactly what they are.
They all have criminal records.
And welcome to the briefing.
If they broke our nation's laws, yes, they are criminals.
That's textbook gaslighting. The public still has full access to the AP stories, they're just not reading them anymore. Why? Because people are waking up. The AP doesn't carry the trust it once did. Its bias is so loud, it drowns out the facts. So enough with the martyr complex. Instead of playing the victim, maybe try going back to actual reporting. Now that would be a plot twist. Next up, the reporter who casually admitted they didn't know that crossing the border illegally is, wait for it, actually illegal. Yes, really. This is the level we're dealing with. Members of the press corps who don't even understand basic US law. And this right here is part of why illegal border crossings have dropped a staggering 90% since Trump returned to office. Just ask the New York Post. But don't expect CNN or MSNBC to give him an ounce of credit. They're too busy spinning narratives and dodging inconvenient truths. That's wild how quickly things change when a president decides to draw the line, enforce the law, and mean it can suddenly. The chaos stops. No more open invitations, no more loopholes, just results. What was once a flood is now a trickle.
I just point out, if you heard that type of violent, enticing rhetoric from our side of the aisle, from Republican leaders on Capitol Hill, I think there would be a lot more outrage in this room today. It's unacceptable, the comments that have been made by these Democrat leaders, and frankly, they don't even know what they're talking about. Because President Trump was elected with a mandate from the American people to make this government more efficient. He campaigned across this country with Elon Musk, vowing that Elon was going to head up the Department of Government Efficiency, and the two of them, with a great team around them, were going to look at the receipts of this federal government and ensure it's accountable to American taxpayers. That's all that is happening here, and for Democrat officials to incite violence and encourage Americans to take to the streets is incredibly alarming, and they should be held accountable.
Karoline didn't stop at schooling clueless. Reporters she cranked up the heat on left-wing lawmakers too. And let's talk about that meltdown. The anti-drug protests. They were practically performance art, screaming matches, dramatic walkouts, and perfectly timed statements clearly staged for the cameras. But here's the kicker. If anyone on the right pulled half those stunts, the media would be demanding jail time. The hypocrisy. Off the charts. What made it even more absurd? Most of these lawmakers weren't even talking about the actual waste or policy failures they claimed to be protesting. It was just noise, manufactured outrage, and a desperate grab for airtime. Typical. They were too busy fawning over Elon Musk tweets and chasing Dogecoin fantasies to notice what was actually going on. Then boom, Karoline Leavitt dropped a bombshell that sent the press room into a tailspin. She called out Politico directly, and what she exposed left jaws on the floor. No, Politico didn't walk away with an $8.2 million check in hand, but let's not pretend we don't see what's going on. That money flowed through pricey subscriptions to their elite Pro Planner high-ticket service, offering insider policy, analysis, and exclusive access to Washington's power corridors. Not every dollar came from USAID, sure, but a significant chunk was funneled through multiple federal agencies, all funded by your tax dollars. Politico scrambled to do damage control, releasing a carefully worded statement. Asterisk, we have never received any government funding, no subsidies, no grants, no handouts. Asterisk, technically, that's true, but technically true isn't the same as honest. Let's be real, public money is still landing in their pockets, just dressed up as expensive government employee subscriptions. Some of those pro plans, they cost up to $15,000 a year. That's right, $15,000 for curated narratives and insider content that quietly shapes the conversation in DC.
Coming out here to the briefing room, I was made aware of the funding from USAID to media outlets, including Politico, who I know has a seat in this room, and I can confirm that the more than $8 million taxpayer dollars that have gone to essentially subsidizing subscriptions to Politico on the American taxpayers' dime will no longer be happening. The Doge team is working on canceling those payments now. Again, this is a whole of government effort to ensure that we are going line by line when it comes to the federal.
Let's do the math. How many federal employees had to subscribe for that total to hit $8.2 million? We're not talking about a few policy wonks and analysts. This is a systemic pipeline of taxpayer money flowing into Politico's premium pro service. That's not journalism. That's a business model built on cozy connections and institutional backing. And Karoline Leavitt, she laid it all out with surgical precision, like it was just another day at the office. But the real cherry on top, while the press room was melting down, reporters shouting over one another, trying to spin the moment in their favor, Karoline stayed calm, cool, and razor sharp. She shut them down one by one in real time, dismantling their narratives like a seasoned pro, and she made it look effortless. Let's be clear, her influence doesn't end at the press podium. Karoline is shaking up the media game from both the inside and the outside. The old guard, they're losing their grip, and fast. She's not just navigating the storm, she's reshaping it. But Karoline wasn't done, not even close. After breaking down the funding, smoke and mirrors behind Politico, she turned the spotlight to a much bigger issue, what she called the media's selective outrage and propaganda playbook. Her next target, MSNBC. It started with one smug reporter casually bringing up the crisis at the border, a favorite talking point, but one that came with a glaring omission. Conveniently left out was a key fact. Illegal border crossings have plummeted since Trump returned to office, and not by a small margin, by nearly 90%. That's not speculation, that's data. But facts like that don't fit the narrative, so they get ignored. Instead, Networks like MSNBC continue to push carefully crafted outrage while skipping over real results. Karoline called it out in plain language. The media isn't holding power to account, they're clinging to power themselves. Desperate to control the national conversation, what we're seeing is a shift. The traditional gatekeepers of information against outlets, polished pundits, and well-connected correspondents are being challenged by a new generation that isn't afraid to fight back. Karoline Leavitt stands at the front of that charge, refusing to play by the old rules. She's not just answering questions, she's flipping narratives, calling out hypocrisy, and exposing the double standards that define so much of today's media landscape, whether it's $15,000 a year insider subscriptions bankrolled by taxpayers, or glaring omissions in border reporting. She's pulling back the curtain and showing the public exactly how the game is played. And from the look of things, the old playbook isn't working anymore.
Redirect traffic.
Guys, let's act like adults here. They are generously offering their time to answer your questions. You don't need to scream at them like a bunch of school children. Go ahead.
Karoline didn't even blink. Cool as ever, she clapped back with, "crisis. You mean the one we solved?" The silence that followed, absolutely deafening. Reporters who just moments earlier had been shouting over each other suddenly had nothing to say, but that was only the beginning. The next wave of drama hit with a leaked memo that allegedly showed internal pressure at several major networks to downplay President Biden's frequent stumbles during press appearances. Of course, Karoline had receipts. She shredded the narrative in real time, calling out the double standard without missing a beat. "Why?" she asked. Does the same media that went full attack mode over Trump's fast food diet suddenly get amnesia when Biden can't finish a sentence without wandering off stage? The look on the reporters' faces said it all: cornered, then completely unprepared for someone who wouldn't play by the usual rules. But Karoline wasn't just interested in exposing media bias. She went further, directly confronting the hypocrisy pulsing. Through the heart of DC, she called out the way conservative voices are consistently labeled as extreme, while far-left tantrums are brushed off as passionate activism. Then came the line that landed like a punch. If the rule only applies to one side, it's not a rule, it's a weapon. That moment crystallized the Karoline effect. She's not just playing defense, she's rewriting the rules of engagement. Legacy outlets are scrambling to keep up. They're used to politicians dodging tough questions, offering polished but empty responses. Karoline doesn't do that. She answers, then flips the script, and suddenly, the questioner is the one on the defensive. You can feel the panic from media veterans who simply don't know how to respond to someone who actually knows the facts and refuses to be intimidated by the press badge across the aisle. And Karoline didn't stop at reporters. She took direct aim at the institutions that shelter them, especially the ones still pretending to be neutral arbiters of truth. When NPR published a smug editorial painting itself as proudly independent and above the political fray, Karoline wasn't having it. She asked the question nobody else in the room had the guts to raise. If you're truly independent, why do your editorial decisions always lean in the same direction? Then she backed it up with specifics: NPR's history of skewed election coverage, softball interviews for Democrat candidates, and relentless hit pieces on conservatives that read more like campaign ads than journalism. And guess what? Not a single reporter in the room challenged her facts, not one. They didn't even try. That silence spoke volumes. Karoline then pivoted, shifting the spotlight to one of the most pervasive problems in modern journalism: the obsession with identity politics over actual policy. They're more interested in labeling people than listening to them, she said. And the proof? It was sitting right there in the room. Reporters asking questions laced with loaded assumptions, clearly designed to generate controversy instead of uncovering truth. But Karoline didn't take the bait. She turned the questions right back on them, exposing not just the bias in their framing, but the shallow thinking behind it. Her strategy is simple, but devastatingly effective. Respond with facts, call out the spin, and make it clear that she's not afraid to go toe-to-toe with the media machine. She doesn't posture, she doesn't dodge, she delivers. Then dismantles, and the impact is unmistakable. What's becoming clear to everyone watching is this: Karoline Leavitt isn't just another press secretary. She's a force. She's part of a larger shift away from legacy media dominance, away from pre-approved talking points, and toward a style of communication that's unfiltered, unapologetic, and deeply informed. She's breaking the mold. And for a press corps that's grown used to soft targets and safe outrage, that's deeply unsettling. Because Karoline knows the media's playbook and she's not playing along. She's burning it, and in doing so, she's sending a message not just to reporters, but to the entire political class. The old rules don't work anymore. The old tricks don't land. And the old gatekeepers, they're no longer in control.
Good question, April. So look, the president, as you know, is incredibly accessible. First day here, he wanted all of you in the Oval Office. He got a 60-minute press conference with the leader of the free world while he was simultaneously signing executive orders. I may add, that's pretty impressive. I don't think the previous office holder would be able to pull such a thing off. So look, the president is the best spokesperson that this White House has, and I can assure you that you will be hearing from both him.
***, watching Karoline was like watching a chess master dismantle a room full of checkers players who didn't even realize they were outmatched. ***. They thought they had the upper hand. Spoiler alert, they didn't. ***. Did that the viral moment hit like lightning. A reporter accused her of dodging a question. No fluster, no raised voice. Karoline just smiled and delivered a line that dropped jaws and egos. ***. You didn't like the answer because it wasn't the one you came for. Boom. Instant silence. Cameras clicked. Phones lit up. That clip was all over X, formerly Twitter, within minutes, racking up views, reactions, and a whole lot of second-hand embarrassment for the press. But this wasn't just a one-liner for the cameras. Karoline Leavitt is doing something most people didn't think was possible anymore. She's making it not just acceptable, but fashionable, to call out the media's nonsense in real time. No fluff, no scripted deflections, just facts and fire. And honestly, the game is changing because of her. Just when you thought she might ease up, she doubled down. This time, her sights were locked on a group that's long operated with little pushback, the so-called fact-check truckers. These self-appointed truth guardians have built their brand on appearing impartial. But Karoline tore the mask right off. She didn't mince words. She pointed out that these organizations always seem to correct conservatives, sometimes aggressively, while giving the left a soft pass or outright ignoring their blunders. And then came the gut punch. When you're funded by the same people you're supposed to fact-check. How is that objective? The room got quiet fast. Reporters who'd been gearing up for their next questions suddenly sat still because the truth was obvious. She wasn't exaggerating. She wasn't speculating. She was saying out loud what millions of Americans have suspected for years. Then she highlighted a specific example, one that sent shockwaves through the room. A completely accurate viral claim had been slapped with a missing context label. Why? Because it made the administration look bad. Karoline wasn't having it. She fired back with precision. Missing context is code for we don't like how this sounds. And the reporters, they didn't argue because they couldn't. They knew she was right. And then came the knockout line, simple, savage, and impossible to refute. If fact-checkers were really doing their job, they'd be too busy correcting the White House transcript to go after memes. Boom, that one didn't just hit, it echoed. She wasn't done. Karoline pivoted once again, this time bringing it back to what really matters, the people. She reminded the room, the American people aren't stupid. They're just tired of being gaslit. You can slap all the labels you want on the truth, misleading, missing context, debunked, but people aren't buying it anymore. Not when they're living the reality those labels try to deny. The energy in the room shifted. Reporters weren't just listening anymore. They were reacting, some with visible frustration, others scribbling notes so furiously they looked like their careers depended on it, because they might. The rules are changing, and Karoline isn't just following a new playbook, she's writing it. And then came her final moment. The closer, the kind of line that doesn't just end a press briefing, it defines it with that same steady tone, that same fearless focus. Karoline turned her attention to the Oval Office. No sugarcoating, no carefully chosen phrasing to soften the blow. She called out the administration's mixed messages, the staged appearances, and the ongoing confusion that seems to trail President Biden like a shadow. And then, quiet, clear, and sharp enough to draw blood, she dropped the final line. We don't need a president who reads from cards. We need one who can lead without them. The room froze. There were no comebacks, no shouted follow-ups, just stunned silence and more than a few reporters pretending they weren't suddenly scribbling notes like their careers were hanging in the balance. That right there, that's how you walk into the lion's den and leave the lions whimpering. Karoline didn't just survive her first day on the podium, she owned it. She flipped the script. She exposed the spin, and she made it very clear that she's not just another spokesperson. She's a problem for every media outlet that thought they could coast on the same tired narratives. For every reporter who came into that room expecting to control the story, and for every institution that got comfortable thinking accountability only flows in one direction. She's not reading from a script. She's not playing it safe. She's not here to keep things polite and predictable. She's here to tell the truth even when it stings, especially when it stings. And here's the thing, it's working. People are tuning in. They're watching not just for updates, but for moments, real moments. Mic drops, call-outs, clarity. Politics has become must-watch TV again, not because of spectacle, but because someone's finally cutting through the noise. Karoline Leavitt is showing America what happens when you combine preparation, principle, and guts. And the legacy media, they're scrambling to figure out what to do next because their usual tricks aren't working. So now I pass the mic to you. Which moment had you nodding, clapping, or yelling, say that again, at your screen? Was it the instant classic, didn't like the answer because it wasn't the one you came for, asterisk, the brutal truth bomb about missing context? Or maybe that final dagger aimed at the president's cue cards? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you know someone who still thinks press briefings are boring, do them a favor, send them this video. Karoline just turned the briefing room into the main stage. Asterisk, asterisk, like, subscribe, and stay tuned, because this is only the beginning. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk.